Hey, what's up guys? This video is for section 9.2, which is solving quadratic equations by graphing. Now the good thing is for this lesson, I am not going to expect for you to graph it by hand and then find your solutions. I am going to use an app that is free for everyone. You guys can download the app on your electronic device. It's called Desmos, and it is a graphing calculator or a graphing app that you guys can use to graph your quadratic equations. Now the big idea is to find where does the graph, the quadratic equation, or the parabola, that is the name of the shape of the quadratic equation, where does the parabola crosses the x-axis, and those are going to be your solutions. Keep in mind that solutions for quadratic equations, they are also called x-intercepts. You guys can also say zeros of the quadratic equations, or you guys can say solutions. Those things actually mean the same thing. You guys just need to find where does it cross the x-axis. So I'm going to do number 3 and number 4 for you guys, and let's look at number 3 first. Number 3, you guys have the equation a squared minus 2a equals -1. First of all, in order to graph it in a graphing calculator, or even if you guys use an app, the one I'm going to show you guys, it is an app, you guys need to get everything on one side and everything equal to 0. So here guys, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this -1 to the other side of the equation. I'm going to do the opposite, and I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So I am just getting that 1 to the other side. When I do that, I'm going to put an arrow here. This is going to be a squared minus 2a plus 1 equal to 0. Now that 0, guys, in your graphing calculator or your graphing app is going to represent the y variable. So you guys will have an equation. Y equals a squared minus 2a plus 1. So you guys will change that 0 to a y. And let me just put that on the side so you guys can see it. Y, 0 becomes a y equals, and then you guys write down the trinomial on or whatever you guys have on the other side of the equation. A squared minus 2a plus 1. Now let me get that Desmos app, and you guys can use it to graph it, and then we're going to talk about where does it cross the x-axis. So you guys can see the website on the screen. We have desmos.com, that's what it's called. You guys can start graphing any function that you guys have or equation. Just hit that red button and you guys will have a quadratic you guys can graph a quadratic equation. It has a few more options. It has a scientific calculator that you guys can also use. This one is not for graphing. It's just a regular scientific calculator that you guys can use in any other class, science, physics, if you guys want. But I'm going to press that start graphing, and you guys will see how to graph the function. Alright, so once you guys press that red button, you guys are able to input a function. So I have one right here, and I'm going to make this screen a little bit bigger in a second, but I want to explain something before I do that. You guys can put any function here, and it's going to graph for you on the coordinate plane. You guys got the keypad on the bottom. You guys look for what you need, and then you guys input your function. Now here's the thing, when you guys use the graphing app to graph, you guys are not going to be able to use the A or the B or the C, just an X and a Y when you guys are graphing. So even though here guys, I do have an A squared minus 2A plus 1, I'm going to change that A to an X. So you guys will see I'm using X squared minus 2X plus 1. So when you guys are graphing, and I'm just going to zoom in this one so you guys can see it. When you guys are graphing, make sure that you guys actually use the y and the x. So y equals, and then everything else is going to have an x. So let's understand what the graph is. So notice that the graph, this one here, you guys have the x squared minus 2x plus 1 is the parabola going up. I know, first of all, it's going up because the a value is positive. I know the y-intercept is +1 because the c value is +1. So you guys have that. Now look at the x-axis, and I'm going to actually show you guys the x-axis right here. This is the x-axis. So I want to know where the parabola is crossing the x-axis. And if you guys see, the parabola is crossing right here. Now what is that variable, or what is that value? Not variable. What is that value on the x-axis? Well, if the origin is here, this point right here is -1 for the x. The y is 0, but the x value is -1. And I just labeled that for you guys. You can actually press on that button, on that point on the graphing app, and it gives you guys the values of the point. So you guys see that we have 1, 0. So that is my solution. Now, do we have another point or somewhere else that the graph, the parabola is touching the x-axis? Nope, that's the only one, guys. That's the only point that we have. So what I'm trying to say is the parabola, you guys can have two different points that will cross the x-axis, two solutions. You might have one solution where the parabola is on the vertex. That's actually the vertex of the parabola because it's the lowest point here. So the vertex is on the x-axis, or you might have the parabola that is not touching the x-axis at all. Let me explain about that one when it's not touching. If the parabola is not touching, it's not crossing the x-axis at all, we say there are no real solutions, okay? Now, it doesn't mean that we don't have answers. We will have answers. Those answers are going to be imaginary numbers, imaginary solutions. But imaginary solutions, we don't do that in Algebra 1. You guys are going to learn that in Algebra 2. So that's why I say in this class for Algebra 1, it's sufficient if you guys say no real solutions, okay? But Algebra 2, you actually will find those imaginary solutions. Now, for this graph, we only have one solution, okay? And that one solution is positive 1. So I'm going to go into the actual graph here, and let me make this one smaller. And I'm going to copy kind of the parabola when you guys graph it. All you have to do, guys, this is not going to be perfect. You're not going to graph this by hand. But using the graphing calculator, I know that this is going to be my vertex. I know my y-intercept is a positive 1 right there. And I'm just going to draw my U-shape going up. And you guys have yourself the parabola like this. And the parabola doesn't have to be perfect. It's just a U-shape going up. Notice mine is not that perfect, but I know what you guys are talking about. I know that you know it is a parabola. So my solution, it actually says solve by graphing x equals positive 1. So that is my solution. If you guys have two solutions, you guys need to write down the two numbers, the two values. If you guys have the parabola not crossing the x-axis, then you guys write no real solutions. Alright guys, so for this one, you don't really need the graphing app because I gave you guys the graph already made for you, but I did put it in my graphing Desmos app so you guys can actually see that it is the same graph. What you guys want to know is where is the parabola crossing the x-axis you're trying to solve. If you guys want to graph it in your graphing calculator or your graphing app, remember that you guys want everything on one side equal to 0. So if you guys kind of see on the screen here, y equals x squared minus 7x plus 10. Plus 10. That's because I have to get this minus 10 to the other side, so I have to do the opposite. I add 10 to both sides, and I'm just going to show you guys that right here. Plus 10 over here. So you guys will get n squared minus 7n plus 10 equal to 0. And let me just write it down on the bottom. N squared minus 7n plus 10 equal to 0. But remember that in the graphing calculator or the graphing app, you change that 0 into the y, and we can change n or any other variable into the x. So you guys can actually graph in that electronic device or your graphing calculator. Now let's go ahead and talk about where the parabola is crossing the x-axis. So my x-axis is right here. I know that 2 points are crossing the x-axis, this one and this one. So I have 1 point at x equals positive 2. That's because from the actual origin, you can see that this point is 1, 2. The other one is going to be over here. So I'm just going to label that, and I have x equals, let's go ahead and count from the origin. Here's the origin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So x equals 5. That's what we say. The values for x, or in this case, n. Notice that we have n over here. So I'm just going to change that x to an n because just to make it the same, we have n equals positive 2, n equals negative 5. So let me change that to n equals positive 2, n equals 5. So I'm going to put n equals 2 comma 5, or you guys can use brackets. 2 comma 5 are your solutions. We also say zeros. We also say x-intercepts. You guys can use any of those words to actually say where the parabola crosses the x-axis. Another name that we have is also roots. So you guys have roots, zeros, x-intercept solutions in order to say where, what are the solutions or the answers for that quadratic equation. So guys, this is how you guys use Desmos app. You guys can use it. It is free. You guys can download it on your electronic device. It works for cell phones, it works for tablets, it works for laptops, PCs, or Chromebooks. You guys can use it to graph the parabola. All right. So like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, if you guys want to watch my full version, you guys can go to my Algebra 1 playlist in my YouTube channel. And I wish you guys the best. I want you guys to always practice your math, and I'll see you guys later.